Welcome, brave souls, to Fear File Chronicles, your one-way ticket to spine-chilling stories and terrifying tales. Tonight, we'll be diving into the darkest corners of the human mind with the story, After the Fall, Part 8. Penned by the twisted mind of Locked 334. Together, we'll explore the unexplained and face our deepest fears. But before we begin, if you enjoy trembling in terror, be sure to hit that like button, share this video with your fellow fear fanatics, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the bell notification so you never miss an eerie episode. Your support truly means the world to us, so feel free to leave a comment below to join the Fear File Chronicles community. Now, without further ado, let's unravel the mysteries of the unknown together as we delve into tonight's fear-inducing story, After the Fall, Part 8. Dim the lights and prepare yourself for a chilling journey into the Fear File Chronicles. Tony breathed an almost audible sigh of relief, taken aback by this surprising revelation. He had believed himself trapped within a psychopath-laden camp, a place where murder was the main event. He was guided back to the equipment room, with instructions given to Packrat to return all his confiscated personal effects. Soon after, she reappeared carrying the olive green pack he'd taken from Colin. Seeing the bag nearly brought a tear to Tony's eye, but he swiftly wiped it away. He accepted his belongings and was led to a part of the compound previously unexplored by him, another barracks filled with young men. His gaze swept over the room, identifying only two familiar faces. The rest, he assumed, had been reassigned. A twinge of sadness hit him when Duke was nowhere to be seen, but he held on to the hope that it was for the best. Tony was not even sure if he wanted to be part of this group, but it appeared he had little choice. He only hoped that he'd be safer, surrounded by these soldiers. An older boy, appearing about 17, approached him, his dark, scraggly hair hanging to his shoulders, some of it tied back to keep out of his face. His skin was heavily tanned by the sun. He quickly extended a hand.
The name's Apache.
Tony responded.
I'm Stone.
Welcome to B Company, Stone. Come on, let me show you your bunk.
Apache said, leading Tony to his bed.
Go ahead and get settled. Chow is in 30 minutes and we have a hike after that.
Tony sat on his bed, emptying his bag into a footlocker. The trunk already contained a week's worth of uniforms and toiletries. Everything fit perfectly, and his name, Stone, was labeled at the end of the bed. His space had been prepared in the few minutes it took him to arrive. This place is efficient, Tony mused as he closed his locker. The room's door opened once more, but Tony didn't look up, noticing instead the name Duke on the footlocker opposite him. Duke and Tony, only a year apart, were placed as partners due to their previous shared training. These partnerships were responsible for each other during training and missions. What these missions entailed, Tony didn't know, but he was glad to have Duke watching his back. This was the first time since losing Colin that he felt he could truly trust someone. The next year would be spent training like any other soldier, with one key difference. They had to prepare for the world they now inhabited and learn how to fight it. Once their superiors were convinced they could handle themselves in the field, a training exercise was implemented to test them. Pairs were sent beyond the walls with a specific task. Tony and Duke set off in the cold night, equipped with minimal gear and a rifle each. They watched other groups splinter off into different directions. Once alone on the snowy path, Duke started idle conversation. Tony answered as well as he could, his mind looping back to the last time he was outside the base. His eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. His predominant thought was of a potential attack, a vivid memory of the day Colin died, resurfacing.
You okay?
Yeah, just not sure if I'm ready for this.
Well, that's what we are out here to find out.
Duke replied, giving his partner a light nudge.
Maybe. Or maybe we are being fed to the wolves.
Tony sighed. They halted and crouched near their target location, remaining still under snow-covered foliage. Their eyes were fixed on a large moving truck in the distance, Three men standing outside an old barn, smoking and chatting. Their mission was to retrieve that truck by any means necessary. Duke tapped Tony's shoulder, then pointed toward the western tree line. Tony nodded, and they stealthily moved from their hiding place toward the trees. The two boys kept low, moving from tree to tree, their camouflage and the darkness obscuring their movement until they were near. They paused at the edge of the trees, watching until the men returned inside the barn. Duke darted for the driver's door while Tony headed for the opposite side. They quietly opened the doors and gently shut them. Duke's hands explored the dash behind the steering wheel, finding the cold metal keys still in the ignition. He shot a questioning glance at Tony, asking silently if he was ready. Tony nodded again, and the truck rumbled to life. Only a few feet had the truck covered when the barn door burst open, and the men started firing their rifles at the vehicle. The boys ducked instinctively to dodge a ricocheting bullet, and Duke slammed the pedal to the metal. Within minutes, they were out of sight and laughing about their successful escape. 2 miles down the road, Duke steered the truck into a small clearing in the woods. They needed to verify the truck's contents before heading home. Tony jumped down from the passenger seat and joined Duke at the back door. The metal protested with creaks and moans as the latch dropped and the door opened. Duke stumbled back for a moment, bumping into Tony as 4 teenagers emerged from the cargo area, rifles aimed at them. Tony's gaze fell in disappointment, and Duke merely shook his head in disbelief.
Looks like you boys failed,
Apache said, grinning.
Only because we got bad intel.
Yeah. Plus, the two groups aren't supposed to be working together. Just partners.
You think there are rules out there?
Weasel mocked.
I think I know where you got your name from now.
Tony shot back.
Watch it, kid.
Weasel retorted, earning a laugh from Tech.
Okay. All right.
Apache intervened.
Let's get back to the base before it gets too late. Wheeler, get this thing moving.
With a quick acknowledgement of his orders, one of the larger boys climbed into the driver's seat. Duke and Tony made to follow, but were told that their punishment for failing the mission was a 6-mile trek home. Duke glared at Apache, the thought of the hike in the snow igniting his fury. Tony tapped him on the shoulder and shook his head, signaling that arguing would be futile. The truck came to life again, and in no time, it was out of earshot. The two boys started their long, cold journey home, their eyes scanning the shadowy trees. After about an hour, Tony alerted Duke to something. He'd spotted the lights first, but as soon as Duke saw them, they both dropped into a crouch and crept towards the trees. The truck sat unmoving on the roadside, illuminated by its headlights. They observed for a few minutes, but saw no movement. If an opposing force had taken the truck, they would surely have moved it. The scene just didn't add up. Duke made a quiet sign for Tony to follow as he started moving toward the truck. Tony unshouldered his rifle, keeping his gaze fixed on the truck. Duke followed suit, readying himself for any possible threat ahead. The cab was empty, with no sign of their squad mates. Tony moved towards the still unlatched back door. One hand pushed it open, while the other aimed the rifle inside. Inside was empty too, but something caught his eye. A dark brown stain on the floor. Duke came around the passenger side to find Tony staring into the truck. It took a moment, but as soon as he spotted the stain, his hand clasped Tony's arm, pulling him back to the trees for cover. The two sat, listening to the wind rustling the canopy above. Laughter echoed faintly, and Duke turned to its source. Instinctively, they moved towards the sound, careful to avoid any twigs or brush that might betray their approach. The crackling of a fire became audible, as did the voices of 4 different men. The trees started to thin out, indicating they were approaching a clearing. The light from the fire was visible now, and the shadows of the men danced across the grass.
I really wish you hadn't killed the long-haired one.
A man's voice floated through the darkness.
He was pretty. I could have had some fun with him.
We'd still have that little girl if you weren't so rough with her.
Another voice echoed back.
Both of you shut up. You're giving me a headache.
A third voice chided.
You could be helping me clean this meat so we can eat.
At those words, Tony took a step back. Duke urged him forward. They both needed to see what lay ahead, even though they didn't want to. Ahead, a man was poking at the fire with a stick. Another was rummaging through packs on the ground. Two others were standing over the shredded body of Apache. A wave of nausea hit Tony. He covered his mouth, fighting the urge to vomit. Duke signaled him to keep quiet. Their three friends were bound and gagged at the edge of the makeshift campsite, beaten and bruised. Fear in their eyes was palpable.
We've got to do something,
Tony whispered.
I know. Just give me a minute to think,
Duke replied, attempting to keep his voice low.
There are too many of them for us to handle, so we're going to have to split them up.
Let me go around, get their attention. You go get our friends.
No. If they catch you, then I'm alone,
Duke replied, shaking his head.
I'm going to try and pull the one by the bag out. Get your knife ready.
Creeping through the trees, Duke led the way with Tony close behind. They arrived at the back of a tree, near where the man was rummaging through a pile of bags. Tony positioned himself against the tree, drawing his combat knife from its sheath. He gave Duke a nod. In response, Duke picked up a rock and swiftly launched it at the man, hitting his leg. The man yelped in surprise, drawing a knife and cautiously approaching the tree. As he rounded it, Duke was standing 10 feet away in the forest, a sick smile spreading across the man's face. The man, now past the tree, began to lick his knife blade. He egged Duke on, laughing to himself. Suddenly, Tony sprang onto the man's back, a hand covering his mouth and the knife quickly sliding across his throat. Blood gushed from the wound, stifling the man's attempt to scream. The man began to struggle. Duke moved in and held him down, keeping the cries muffled until he finally stopped moving. Leaning against the tree, Tony stared down at his blood-covered knife and hands.
Okay, now we just have to split off another one,
Duke said, peeking around the tree. Tony didn't respond. Seeing his friend's stunned expression, Duke grabbed his shoulders.
You gotta stay with me, Stone. I can't take these guys on my own.
Tony was shaking, fear evident in his trembling body.
You did what you had to do. They killed Apache and they're going to kill all of us if you don't help me stop them.
The weight of the situation bore down on Tony. Yet he knew Duke was right. Sometimes you had to kill to stay alive. He began to move, weaving between trees as they circled the camp. Feeling like a wolf stalking its prey, he understood why they were called apex predators. They hunted the hunters.
Where the hell did Jeb go?
A man asked from the camp.
I don't know, Bill. He probably went to take a piss.
Well, he didn't take his gun, so go check on him.
The smallest man in the group, grumbling about having to chase after Jeb, stepped into the brush. He was carrying one of the rifles they had taken from one of the boys. As he moved away from the camp, he tripped over something solid. His rifle tumbled away as he landed with a thud, swearing in pain.
What happened, Rick?
Nothing. Just tripped over a root or something.
Rising slowly and dusting off his pants.
Well, get Jeb and get your ass back here.
Yeah.
Rick mumbled, continuing to wipe his pants. His hand came away wet, and when he examined it, the red tint was undeniable. His eyes widened as he turned to look at Jeb's body sprawled beside the tree. Before he could scream, 2 shots rang out from the campsite. Rick quickly picked up his rifle and rushed back towards the fire. There, he found the 2 remaining men lying in their own pools of blood, bullet holes in their skulls. He scanned the trees, seeing nothing, but when he turned back towards Jeb's body, he found Duke aiming at him.
Put the gun down,
Duke said.
Yeah, right, kid.
Rick lifted his gun in response.
Do what he says.
Tony's voice broke through the silence, the barrel of his AR-15 pressing against the man's head. They disarmed Rick and bound him with the same restraints that had once held their friends. 2 of the boys were instructed to create a gurney for Apache's body. Tony sent Wheeler to check if their truck was still at the road. Once everything was collected, along with their prisoner, they trudged back to the road and loaded Apache into the truck. The group remained silent, guns trained on Rick, who sat gagged in the back. Upon reaching the base, they unloaded quietly. Their instructor, upon seeing Apache's ravaged body, began to question the group. But before he could, Tony and Duke exited the truck, pushing their prisoner towards him. They silently indicated his crimes as they passed, their bodies tired, hurt, and coated in blood and dirt. All they wanted was to bury Apache. But their superiors had other plans. Apache's body was confiscated for evidence, and Rick was placed in a holding cell. Well, my friends, we've reached the end of tonight's chilling tale, After the Fall, Part 8, by the talented Locked 334. I hope you've enjoyed our descent into darkness and that you'll carry a piece of the Fear File Chronicles with you as you drift into uneasy dreams. If our story left you shivering and shaking, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who crave a good scare, and subscribe to the Fear File Chronicles for more haunting horrors. Remember to hit the bell notification so you're always among the first to know when a new nightmare awaits. As always, we appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sharing your fears and frights with us truly means a lot, so don't be shy to engage with our sinister community. Until next time, remember to embrace the darkness, for it is within the shadows that our most terrifying stories are born. Good night, and stay scared.